Today, we're going to be discussing how to use conversion copywriting with AI. And to find out how to do this, we reached out to Audrey Chia, who is a longtime LinkedIn friend of ours. Audrey is the founder of Close with Copy, a hybrid human AI copywriting consultancy that specializes in helping brands develop quality content at scale. Audrey, really excited to have you today. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me. I have been waiting for this chat with you, Adam.
I love it. I honestly think of Audrey as a cyborg in the way that she knows a lot of what I know on copywriting and conversion, but she also brings the machine side as well. And that's something that I frankly don't know much about. So I'm excited to learn from the master herself. So let's dive right in, Audrey. If someone were to start using AI for copywriting, how would you go about it specifically to improve conversion rates?
Yeah, so I always say that before generating any kind of content, strategy is important. Before generating any kind of AI content, strategy is even more important because you're going to generate it at scale, right? So it's hyper important that you firstly think about who is your target audience, what is your value proposition, what are your key unique selling points, your product differentiators, tone of voice, style of writing. You see all the thought processes that a usual copywriter has. Then think about how you would use AI to create or optimize your content creation. So there are different ways that you can use AI, right? One would be to perhaps think of ideas as a sparring partner. So you can ask AI to develop, for example, 10 different headlines for your brand, and you can pick one that works. And as a copywriter who writes for your audience, you already know what works best. So especially if you have had quite some experience working with your own clients, right? Out of 10 headlines, you'll be like, hey, I think this one converts best. It sounds punchy and witty. Let's go for this. So that is one way to generate ideas, right? But the second way to use AI would be actually to create the content and get it about 70 to 80% polished, which means that you come in to still refine the work, but you prompt it in a way where you're getting an output that is something that you already desire instead of just searching it up. So with that second strategy, you need to be able to do two things. You need to firstly know your end in mind, your final vision, and you need to know how to prompt AI using like different steps in order to get there. So the prompts that I use are usually not a single prompt. It's usually split into, for example, 2 to 3 sections because it allows me to break down my thought process, feed it to ChatGPT, get it to think about copy the way I think about it, then develop the end result, which is why the results are always a lot more refined compared to like a single prompt.
Hmm. I've noticed just in my limited experience with it that it's not as easy as just plugging in a sentence or two and asking AI to do it magically for you. It almost feels much more like a conversation with somebody where you're giving
Yes.
them feedback, they're giving your feedback, and you kind of bounce it back and forth between you and the machines. How do you affect the tone of the copy? Like, how do you prevent it from that kind of like generic AI copy that we've all seen? Because I've seen the stuff that you produce, and it's not like that at all. So I'm curious to see what is your secret sauce in doing so.
Yeah, so there are like different ways that you can get it to sound more human or more like a brand. So there is method one, which is you tell it to write in a certain way. The way you do it is that you give it some keywords to anchor, right? So for example, please write in a professional and corporate tone. These two keywords are great for brands like banks, for financial institutions, or anything that is like government related. They are great keywords. Just keep it professional, corporate, like you're going to get the tone of voice that you're looking for because I've tested so many things, right? So that works. If you're going for something like fun and witty, then you can use those keywords, but AI isn't as great as capturing like the nuances of being fun or witty, which is why a lot of the words always sound like really cliche and marketing like and sales like. So in order to get it to sound fun and witty or to get it to play around with its language, right, you need to do step two, feed it examples of what you want it to write. For example, I sometimes feed it my own kinds of copy examples and say, please write in this tone of voice. These are some examples. Or I would say, please analyze these 3 examples. Tell me the tone of voice and style of writing of the author, and then use that same tone of voice for your next output. The third way is to actually scrape websites if you are working for a client, and to do it ethically, of course, and to drop a link of that website or landing page into ChatGPT 4, it can read the link, or you can screenshot the entire website and upload it, and then ask ChatGPT, can you please analyze the tone of voice and style writing? So these are 3 ways in which you can navigate the AI-ness of ChatGPT.
Got it. And do you do that all in one single prompt? Or is it like you were saying, there might be 2 or 3 prompts like in a row?
So for tone of voice, it usually happens in one prompt before your output prompt. Think of it as steps, right? If I'm working with an intern, I need to first teach the intern what is the tone of voice of my brand. Then I can say, now let's start writing a social media post based on this tone of voice.
Got it. And there's something else that I've noticed in with your prompts is that they're incredibly in depth. And even just at the very beginning of this interview, when you said, oh, you have to understand your USP, who is your ICP, who is your ideal customer, what are their needs, what are their desires? It's almost like you really have to know your research before you even start working with AI, because it sounds like AI will just magnify the work that you've already done. And if you've done no work, it's going to magnify it in a bad way. If you've done a lot of good work, it'll magnify it in a good way. What have you
Yeah.
found? What have you found have been the biggest time saving? I hate to call them hacks, but tricks of the trade that you use to save a lot of time with AI.
Oh, so I love custom instructions. So if you're a ChatGPT user, you will be able to log in different personas in ChatGPT. So I use ChatGPT plus an extension called Superpower ChatGPT, right? So what you're able to do is to have a list of, for example, 5 to 8 different personas, and you can quickly toggle between them. Examples of audience personas that I have would be, you're an audience researcher, you're a conversion copywriter, you're a social media template analyzer. So you can see, like, I create specific custom instructions for different needs, right? And whatever I do it because it's really everyday actionable tasks I need to accomplish, which means that the custom instructions are tailored with the end in mind. So when I talk about using AI, I always say, don't use it for the sake of it. Use it with intention. You know you have a problem you want to solve, then you create a solution to get there even faster than before.
It's so true. I'm actually just making the brief foray into doing no code and starting to build lots of different tools that way. And I've learned this over the years that if I don't have a real strong use case for something, I'm never going to learn to build something. And it sounds like
Yeah,
it's the same way with AI.
definitely. I think that, like, the more you use it, so another thing I want to add is that a lot of people see the potential of it, but they're not using it daily. But the best people who are masters of their own art form, even designers who are great at mid-journey, they're actually clocking in like hours every day to figure out the platform. So it's almost like problem solving, right? If you understand the platform, you can think about using it to problem solve in different ways. Whereas if you don't, all you can do is copy somebody else's solution and apply it to one thing. Whereas there could be like 5 ways to tackle the same problem and using 5 different prompts to do so.
You'd mentioned the custom prompts. Where do you save those? Do you have like a Notion library full of them, or yeah, where do you keep them?
Yeah, so if you download the Chrome extension for ChatGPT, it allows you to save the custom prompts within ChatGPT itself. So it's super convenient. You can just toggle between different personas to create your content.
Ah, okay. Can you tell
You should
I'm
check that
I'm
out. I
I'm a
think you will
newbie at
love
all
it.
this, right?
You will love it. It's super useful.
Oh, that's great. So I'll definitely be using the custom prompts going forward. How about the research that you've done in the past? Like, as you know, I'm really big on research. If we can use like Hotjar polls or email surveys or user testing and jot down all of those notes, how are you able to incorporate research and what you already know about your
Mm.
market into an AI prompt for copywriting?
Yeah, so it's all about, like, I call it priming the AI. I don't know if it's the right term, but it has worked really well for me. Basically, it's giving AI the context before you dive in. Let me give you an example. For example, if you ask AI to create a LinkedIn post for you, it will generate like a chunky paragraph that starts with attention founders and lots of emojis.
Mm.
So that's horrible, right? And you know it's obviously AI generated. The way you get it to sound a lot more like you and to think like you is to give it different things. You have your target audience, you have your role, you have your value prop, and you have the goal of being on LinkedIn, right? So I'm actually telling AI, hey, this is my context. Now I want you to write for me with this context in mind. Now I'm going to feed you some examples of the way I write. And now with the context, the way I write, and the output that I'm asking from you, can you please generate something for me? So I'm not asking it to write a LinkedIn post. I'm giving it everything else before it writes a LinkedIn post. And that's how and why strategy is important. Because once you have that nailed down, then it makes the prompt a lot better and it makes the output 10 times better as well.
I love that. The idea of priming it first. I'm I feel like I should be taking notes on this. I'm gonna have the transcript and everything, of course, but I want to be taking notes now because this stuff is so interesting to me. Okay, I love that. Do you
Yeah,
ever
so just think
use
it as like an intern. Like if the simplest way, you don't have to think of it as a complicated tool, right? I always think of it as a supercharged intern. What does the intern need in order to fulfill a certain task? That is how I prompt. That's why my prompts are very, I would say a little bit different from other people's prompts. A lot of people prompt with the output in mind only, but I prompt with thinking, what are the steps I need in order to get to my end result? And then I break down all the steps. And then I start teaching AI all my steps. So with that in mind, I think you'll be able to figure out something that works best for yourself and your own workflows.
so speaking of your own workflows, tell our listeners a bit more about what you and your company does and then how you use AI to help others. Because I think it's
Yes.
fascinating.
So like what I was saying, right? Initially, when at the beginning of my career, I was just doing like copywriting and consulting. So a lot of brand campaigns, landing page optimizations, paid socials, testing different ads and messaging. But right now, what we are doing is taking AI to supercharge the entire process. So I myself have tested 12 different AI copywriting tools, and I was really frustrated that I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. It's like, it's not sounding the way I want to, right? So it's like, this isn't working. That's why I came up with my own prompts and processes to help me get work done. So it was born out of my own need, right? So at this stage, what we are doing is taking all that knowledge of combining human strategy with AI execution and then building it into a tool that has a bespoke custom prompt for companies to get stuff done a lot faster. So, an example, if you're a web design agency that is trying to scale and it is struggling because you need to hire like new freelance writers and you don't know when there will be a new inbound lead, for example, right? Having a tool like this, right, allows you to quickly develop landing pages at scale for a specific type of clients. Let's say clients in the hospitality scene, right? Because most of their landing pages have a certain framework and format. So we can build a bespoke tool that has prompts to get you to those kinds of landing page. And all you need to do is just have one writer on board to review and refine the content, and you can quickly generate multiple versions of it. Now, this is going to save you about 70 to 80% of the time it usually takes to craft a landing page. So for myself, I use my own systems and processes. What would have taken me at least 3 weeks, right, now takes me maybe 2 to 3 days because I still have the strategic session and being able to figure out the prompts, but it streamlines the entire workflow by so much.
Oh, I
And that has
believe
been
it.
really incredible.
Oh, I absolutely believe it. When I was a consultant, it was definitely a challenge for us when you're trying to optimize, like, for example, e-commerce sites that they have the similar template, but the copy is going to be very, very different. So we always had to work kind of one step higher where it's like, okay, let's work on the template level, perhaps add like an alert box up at the top,
Mm,
adding some new design element that would apply to all of them. But we never had a whole lot of granularity to get in on the individual product pages. But I totally grasp the vision of what you're doing. If you're able to do that at scale, I mean, it would be much faster than just saving 80% of the time. I mean, it would be like 99.99999%. Like people, you could crank out
yeah.
so much content that way.
Yeah, and because you are combining your expertise in building landing pages, because we are not just asking ChatGPT to build a landing page, right? We are telling it this is the exact framework that I want because I know this is a high conversion page. Then you get like really good results because now it's saying, oh, I know what a good page looks like. Let me try to recreate that for you. So you can get to a really high quality output if you know the right prompts and if you have like strategy and thought behind the prompting process.
This is just a random thought that occurred to me while we were chatting, because I love your idea of once you have a really great model that you can give to ChatGPT or another AI tool, it absorbs that very quickly and it becomes that super smart intern. Are there existing tools or are there ideas that are connecting AI with specific experts where they can start to distill their information and then basically upload their brains into those tools?
Yes, I think there are a couple of tools. I don't remember them at top of right now, but basically they allow you to upload like PDFs and of your own personal knowledge base and into the system, and then you can easily pull information out or get it to use the information to do something else. So definitely that I think this is the future for most companies and brands, because even if you're not a copywriter, right? Let's say you're someone from HR. This is the brilliant use case, right? You upload all the HR documents and files into the system, and you have your own assistant to support you to get work done faster.
So if somebody were to get started with AI, what would you recommend that they do in the next 24 hours?
Okay, so I would say don't be afraid to get started. The only way you can learn and learn fast is to try it out for yourself and to try it on a real use case. So I know it's very tempting to explore different output just for fun, which is great. It's always good to start off on a fun note. But if you really want to integrate it into your own workflows, think about where you might need this solution and how you can use it to solve a certain problem. An example would be even planning for an office party. It's as simple as that. Now, can I use ChatGPT to do that, right? Okay, I can. So let's try it. And I'm going to give ChatGPT the fundamentals of what makes a good prompt. The role that you want it to play, an office manager, the target audience, your team, your context, it's an office party. What is the structure of the output? And for example, any other important information it should include or not. And with that, you can say, please generate an email for me, for my company, or a newsletter or a brochure. Then you get the output, and then you think about, is it actually giving me what I want? If not, go back and tweak the prompt. Then as you tweak the prompt, you realize, okay, by giving certain keywords, ChatGPT can produce better results, or by structuring it in a different manner, I will get an even more optimized outcome. So those are the things that I would do if I was just starting again.
One thing that I've struggled with AI is that I'll give instructions, it'll give me like a tremendous amount of content out back. And then I'm tempted. It's kind of like a fork in the road because I either want to keep refining my own prompt to see if I can get a better response, or I just say, that's good enough. And I just grab it and I start editing it myself. My father was an editor for a newspaper for 30 years. So I just can't help
Wow.
myself. Like I'm always jumping in and editing things, but I suspect that that's probably the wrong way to go about it. Any further tips on how do you refine prompts to really improve
Yeah.
the results?
So I think if because you don't have to use AI for the sake of it, right? If you feel like it's giving you an output that you can work with, right, and you are much faster editing it, then I would say the human going in to edit the copy would be even faster than refining the prompts because it takes time. And like honestly, it takes time to experiment and to test the prompts. And unless you have um time to do so, then if you want to basically, I would always pick the fastest route to success. So if I can edit the copy, I'm just going to do it. But if you want to experiment with editing the prompt, what you can do is this. For example, it's giving you an output, right? And you're not happy with it. Then I'll ask, can you vary the sentence length? Can you try this tone of voice? Can you do this for me? Then once it gets to like a beautiful state, I'll be like, okay, now please refer to this and develop the other types of content based on this. But what I will also do is I will ask it to recap all the instructions I gave it in order to get to this end result. So yeah, this is something I found out recently. I was like, let me try this. So it recaps steps 1 to 7. Now I'll take steps 1 to 7, combine it into a new prompt and relaunch it in a new, like in a new file, and you will see that it gets a pretty similar results. So this is something you can try.
So it's almost like asking AI to re-explain it in its own words.
Yes, and it will explain really specifically about how it got to the end result. So I can give it 7 different steps, right? But it can actually be 10 steps for AI because it actually added a few steps and shifted things around. So now I know how it's processing. So I know how I can get it to recreate what I'm looking for.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, and all these are all like problem solving. Like nobody's going to teach you this. Nobody's going to tell you there's a handbook. It's more like when you are trying, it's like, oh, it works. Let me try solving in a different way. And then you realize that it can do this. Let's take this method of problem solving and apply it to something else. So one last thing I wanted to share was I read this book called Start at the End. It's about a cyclist, a team of cyclists who made it to the top because they used reverse engineering, right? So what I did was create a custom instruction for ChatGPT as a performance strategist. And then I explained the core concept of the book in my custom instructions, and I gave it an example of what the cyclist did. And I just basically take a summary of the book and put it in. Then I said, can you please problem solve for me in the same manner? So, so just by giving it a framework to think about problems, you are able to solve problems in new and unique ways. And I think these are all really creative ways to use AI for your everyday.
I remember that post. It was probably, I don't know, 4 months ago, but I remember
Yeah.
the lead into it was something like, I put together a cycling training program. And I was like, I didn't know Audrey cycled. I didn't know it was that popular in Singapore. Yeah, you wound up in Malaysia. You went so far. No, that's fantastic. So once you've got the prompts in, you've got the response from ChatGPT or other tools, do you keep refining that? I mean, at some point, like you said, you want to start tweaking it further yourself. What's your workflow once it's out of AI? Do you put this into Notion, a Google Doc? What's your process?
Yes. So I usually work on Google Docs or Notion, depending on my clients. But usually what I do is because AI will never be able to generate the 100% like the content that you really, really want, because there's still some stuff that you want to change. Like you don't like the tone of voice, the sentence structure is repetitive. There will still be a few kinks. That's why an experienced copywriter would be great to come in and to review the work. So I always look out for example, sentences that seem to repeat, right? I always look out for sentence structures that are too similar because it has a tendency to follow a specific sentence structure. I look out for things that sound a little too stuffy or too out there because it also likes to drum up emotions. So I look out for all these things and then I remove it. But that only takes me like 20% of the time it usually takes to write copy. So it's copy editing work instead of copywriting. So AI does the heavy lifting and a copywriter can then come in to really polish it and make sure it's good to go.
Nice. Do you have any additional tips for improving the formatting of the outputs that you're getting from AI?
Yes, you can actually get it to structure the output like as H1, H2, H3. So you can say like, please format it in Markdown and then ask it for the headline to be structured in this manner, that manner. So you see like different sizes and then you can copy that Markdown and you can paste it. There is also a Markdown to HTML converter online. You just type it in. Then you can copy the entire section, paste it into HTML. Then you'll be able to get the text in a super easy manner.
Excellent. Yeah, for anybody listening, puppypaste.com. It's open source tool. It's magnificent for doing that. I use it all the time. So,
Awesome.
oh, that's great. All right. So, Audrey, thank you so much for coming by. Please tell us, where can people learn more about you and where can they learn how to create prompts like the master herself?
Yeah, so I post regularly on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, Audrey Chia, with a mini rocket ship behind my name, so you won't be able to miss me. I also have a 5-day mini masterclass on my LinkedIn that basically walks you through a 5-day process of A, how I think about copy, and B, how I use ChatGPT to execute on those copy. So that's something that you might want to check out as well.
Excellent. And of course, there is Close with Copy as well, which is a fantastic resource too. Audrey, thank
Yes.
you so much for joining us. Was there anything else you wanted to share before we wrap up?
Oh, yes. Don't be afraid to use AI. That is not here to replace writers. I know a lot of people listening might be afraid and be thinking like, "Ah, I can't do it. Like it's going to replace my job and class ignore it." Don't do that. It can be a great collaborator and co-pilot. Once you start integrating it, you will really see massive results.
I love it. All right, Audrey, thank you again for joining us today, and we will definitely catch up soon.
Thank you so much, Adam.